Many other characteristics that make an open world amazing. The things you can do, the landmarks you can explore, the enemies you can face, and the ability to skip all that by pressing a pin on a map? I think it's time for us to talk about fast travels. But first things first, roll the intro. Fast travels. Do they really need an introduction? You open a menu, press an icon and zap, you travel miles in a blink of an eye. What's really hard to explain, however, is the effect fast travel has in games and how we as players experience it. We don't think about it too much, but the consequences these have in our adventures are critical and worth to be looked at with more detail. But let's take a step back one moment and explain what a fast travel really is. Sure, we all know that it's a mechanic that allows the player to instantaneously teleport oneself to another location, but not all games are alike, and as usual, the devil's in the detail. Some games will let players teleport at any time, some others will need certain criteria to be met, some will have limited locations to visit. The variations are endless. But let's make some examples. Pokemon Platinum allows the players to fly with a winged Pokemon. This fast travel has two limitations. The player has to have the right HM that can only be obtained at Veilstone City, a place you only visit around mid-game, and you can only fly to towns you've already visited. The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion is more permissive, letting players not only teleport around all locations discovered in Sauriel, but to the main cities across the map right from the get-go, without the need to explore and find them first. In The Witcher 3, you can only fast travel between signposts you discover. There are about 150 signposts in Vale and Novigrad alone, so these are virtually everywhere, but to fast travel you do have to interact with one, you can't do it from anywhere in the map. The only way to get around Kamurocho in the Yakuza games without walking is by riding a cab. Taxis will bring you close to the desired location, and even to other cities such as Soda and Bori, but drivers around town don't run a charity, and you gotta pay those 100 yens for the ride. You get the gist. Every game has their own conditions and limitations. Some of them are very restrictive, while some others are more loose. The best games are the ones that justify in some way the action of fast traveling, like stagecoaches in Red Dead or getting blackout drunk in Sunset Overdrive. Point is, fast travel is here to stay, yet even if they might be useful for traversing big distances in a flash, every time I use them I felt something is not quite right. Justified or not, the action of fast travel always felt unnatural to me. If we are given a big world to explore, filled with countless quests, treasures, secrets, horizons to breathe in, how come we have the option to skip all that? Sometimes the selling point of a video game is its world, so not even questioning the feature that theoretically breaks the point of having an open world in the first place seems absurd. Yet what makes this a paradox rather than a problem to solve is that fast traveling is one of the most useful tools we have as players to enjoy open world games. If you want to go downtown in Fallout New Vegas but you find yourself in the Mojave Outpost, will you walk miles upon miles in the Nevada desert just to arrive at the already known location? Not all games have the same dependency on fast travel, but it is fair to assume that if fast travel is present in an open world game, you are gonna use it. Maybe not very often at the beginning, but the more you explore and the larger the distances between quests gets, teleporting across the land will become second nature. But doesn't that remove the whole point of the open world? By all means, it's a catch-22 situation. The only true way to compare the fast traveling and non-fast traveling experience would be to play an open world adventure game without making any usage of the fast travel feature. But who would do that? Well, what are you waiting for? Me to say something like, and that's why I played an open world game without using fast travel? That would be silly. Why on earth would I play one game without using fast travel, when I can play two games without using fast travel? That's right, it takes two to tango, so I decided to play my favorite game, the exceptional Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, another time but without using the fast travel feature, as well as Assassin's Creed Origins because unlike Anakin Skywalker, I do like sand. Well, I admit that one of the reasons is more elaborate than the other, but oh well, here we are. In the past weeks, I've been playing Breath of the Wild and Assassin's Creed without making usage of the fast travel feature. I took notes with my experiments, and by the time I wrote the script, I had more than enough thoughts and considerations to address. But before sharing them, I do want to highlight some differences between the two games. I picked Zelda and Origins because both games have very different structure philosophies behind their open world, while having some similarities. I found a table to summarize all differences that you can see on screen. The big one to note is that ACE has a more linear level progression, similar to a role-playing game, while Zelda does not. Both open worlds are quite massive, but Zelda has more biomes, while Origins has a more defined geography. Finally, I do want to highlight that I already played Zelda, while this is my first time with AOC. The other minor differences you can see on screen. Curiously enough, both games start in a mini open world training area, Breath of the Wild starts in the Great Plateau, while Assassin's Creed Origins starts in the Sea Oasis, where there is never the need of using fast travel. But after the prologue ends, the world exponentially grows, and Link and Bayek are free to roam around the lands as they see fit. I learned how to live in a sandbox. I am now ready to live in the wild. In the first couple of hours of both runs, I never felt the pressure of not being able to fast travel. In fact, quite the opposite. To be given a limitation of where to go led me to appreciate the places where I was more, and it gave me a further motivation to explore more in depth the areas I was traversing. I was never in a rush to leave a place. I was never in a rush to complete the main quest. I breathed in the world that surrounded me and lived off the land. In Breath of the Wild, there was never a rush to do the primary quest. After all, there are 120 shrines across Hyrule, many hiding in plain sight. Furthermore, there are no levels. You don't get stronger by grinding, but by exploring you find the best gear, meaning you are rewarded, not penalized for roaming around endlessly. All areas are visible from the player from the get-go, and everyone's adventure will evolve in different ways. In Assassin's Creed Origins, I did countless side activities between a quest and another, like hunting, finding treasures, liberating outposts, assaulting ships, clear layers. By the time I decided to carry on with my main story, I was already levels above the suggested threshold. There was always something available to do, and even the times when I had to ride my camel over the sand dunes, I did not mind the journey. Speaking of transportation, not being able to fast travel meant there was a greater reliance on transportation vehicles, or in the case of the games I've played, equines. Horses and camels were the fastest alternative to get to a specific place without fast travel. Boats in AC and the glider in Zelda were also valid alternatives that allowed me to move faster across the seas and the skies. Overall, in both titles, my game style adapted quite quickly, and rather than planning out my adventure of the smallest detail, I was the adventure shaped around me. It felt natural to have a limited world. After all, in real life you can't teleport everywhere at any time, can you? But all I agreed is not gold. There were some drawbacks for not being able to teleport to previous locations, especially the further adventure developed. In Assassin's Creed there were many side quests and the ones left behind stood behind. Places like the Hippodrome were far and all, but I can't cross the entirety of Egypt to do some races. In Zelda, all 4 main towns are in the very corners of the map, and you can imagine that it becomes tedious to climb Death Mountain every single time I wish to swing by Goron City. The limitations make the adventure fun and exciting, but there are still limitations nonetheless, and having to repeat the same journeys just to get a singular place was not always fun. In Origin especially, there is the big problem that I can only liberate outposts once, I can only collect those treasures once, I can only get those viewpoints once. After doing everything, traversing miles on the Nile without something to do, it's less enjoyable than before. Keep in mind that not using fast travel made the adventure longer. This is neither a positive nor a negative, but it is a fact, and if you're in a rush to complete any quest, a limitation like this one will not suit your adventure. The non-usage of the fast travel feature will make the world a more harmonious and amicable place, but it will dilute your experience. Overall, I did enjoy this quote-unquote challenge because it gave me a lot to reflect upon, and in the reflection blog I will convey what I've learned. But before jumping into that, I do want to say that I slightly enjoyed doing this challenge more in Breath of the Wild rather than Origins. Don't get me wrong, both games are great, but Hyrule has no level-based quests, so it rarely asked me to traverse to specific places, while Ptolemaic Egypt did push me around more often. I would not suggest doing this challenge in every open world game you play in the future, especially because there are definitely some open world games that are clearly not suited for this approach. But I do invite you to limit the times you fast travel and take the time to explore areas you stand by. You may find more enjoyment than what you may think. After conducting my experiments, I wanted to review my position in regards to fast travel, not only looking at my notes, but also expanding my knowledge and see how other games and players tackle the paradox introduced in the video. As I explained earlier, there are many ways fast travels are implemented in games. In general, some titles limit as much as possible the possibility to fast travel, some other makes it very accessible, some other more do everything in between. Generally speaking, I've noticed that games that limit or restrict fast travel do so because the world is worth exploring, while games that abuse it could do so to hide the monotony traversing those open world is. A friend of mine suggested that I bring Fallout 4 and Red Dead Redemption 2 as opposite examples to explain this point. In Fallout 4, players tend to use the fast travel feature a lot between quests because it is not worth traversing the Commonwealth every single time. While in Red Dead, there are so many things to do in the Far West that players almost feel guilty to skip riding across the untamed land. In general, I would say that it would be naive to be fully for or fully against fast travels. On one hand, it is undeniable that not having fast travels pushes the player to have a more tranquil exploration and enjoyment when roaming around the land. However, on the other hand, there are moments, few for some games, many for others, where the player wants to do specific activities and spending hours driving or riding in empty land is less than ideal. I titled this video the fast travel paradox because even after playing massive open world games without fast traveling, I still can crack the code. And well, by definition, there are no answers for paradoxes. You have to play video games how you like, regardless of what others may think is right. I do suggest you experiment with different gameplay styles, but do be careful on what games you pick for your experiments. If you made it this far, I want to thank you one too many fast travel times for watching today's video. This video was a bit tricky to make, and I hope it didn't turn out to be too big of a mess of ideas I had regarding today's topic. What is your take on fast travels? Do you like them? Do you not? Did I inspire you to make a similar challenge to mine? Let me know down in the comments and I'll teleport right away to reply. Have a wonderful day. Arrivederci.